Hello and welcome to Speaking of Courage. As you guys can see, I'm by myself today and I'm in a different location. The following episode is going to be quite a bit different than those in the past, as it is myself. The big issue that I had filming this though, which I didn't notice till after, is there's a real bad echo. There's kind of high ceilings where I'm at, so you're going to hear a weird audio element to it, which may be a little bit distracting, and I apologize for that. After I got done, started editing it, and found that I didn't really want to redo the whole episode, so I figured I would just kind of go with it on that one, and then I'm going to have to move locations. So hopefully this is a bit more sufficient. In the future, I'm going to be doing them from this area if that works. Going to keep Audie here. He's just going to stay in his World War II kit. He's not going to be changing every time, and it's probably just going to be myself for the foreseeable future. But appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you guys watching. For those of you that are still around, I'm going to try to keep this going, try to get some of these stories out. So be doing some research and be getting these episodes going. Again, I apologize in the following, you're gonna hear that real bad echo, and there's a bit of a glare on the posters. So I took my posters down from in here, moved Audie over here, and then hopefully we can get this going. So thanks for watching. Hello and welcome to Speaking of Courage. This is going to be a stripped down version of our show. It's just going to be myself today. Going to be here in my house as opposed to at the set, which may or may not be available in the future. Unfortunately, a lot of things changed. Not going to be able to do the show like we used to, but I do still have some stories of Medal of Honor recipients that I would like to tell and like to get across. So essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to informally share a story and then see how you guys like it. If this is something you want to keep going, I can do some more Medal of Honor recipient stories like this, and some stories of courage and valor, military stories, what have you. But no script, kind of just myself informally talking. So hopefully you guys like it. Today we're going to be telling the story of a U.S. Marine who fought in Vietnam and earned our nation's highest honor, the Medal of Honor. Like a lot of our stories that we've discussed, this is not a household name. This is not Audie Murphy or John Basilone. This isn't going to be one of those guys you're going to read about in textbooks, but he is going to be somebody who did something that was so powerful that his comrades saw that and felt like he deserved that highest honor, and that's what he ended up receiving. So, without further ado, today we're going to be telling the story of Larry Smedley. Larry Smedley was born on March 4th, 1949 in Front Royal, Virginia. He had two siblings. And as a kid, Smedley moved around a lot with his family. So they moved to Georgia when he was young and ended up settling in Union Park, Florida, outside of Orlando. Because they moved around a lot, he attended elementary school in Georgia and then junior high and high school in Florida. Similar to some of the other guys we've profiled, like Audie Murphy, Smedley was physically a small person. He was only 5 foot 6 inches tall, which again is not big by any standards. You know, in the Civil War, guys were small, but by Vietnam, we were pretty standard size. So 5'6" is going to be a visibly small person. But even since he was a young child, he always wanted to be in the military. So despite the fact that he was small, he had a big heart, and he saw himself as doing something bigger and doing something, powerful and that required that strength, like going into the Marine Corps and challenging himself. Smedley was a good student by all accounts. But in 1966, he actually dropped out of high school to enlist in the Marine Corps a few days after he turned 17 years old. His mom obviously was not happy about that, so she tried to do everything she could to talk him out of it. She was worried because of his size. He told his mom he already knew everything school was going to teach him, and he found it boring anyways. He didn't see the point in continuing when he knew that he was going to go in the Marine Corps. His mom later said, quote, "He was so small, I didn't think he could get through boot camp. But he did everything they threw at him with a smile on his face," end quote. So all moms are going to be worrisome, right, about their kids going to the Marine Corps, especially this is 1966. This is going to be as the Vietnam War is escalating, and you're going to start to see that there's troops, deploying. It's not going to be like it was in later years in 68 and 69 where it was on the news every single day. But there are troops. We have had contact. We have had major battles. So your young 5 foot 6, 17-year-old son is getting ready to make a decision and go in the Marine Corps. So obviously she's going to be worried about him. And like I said, he did end up going. So on March 18th, 1966, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in Orlando, Florida. Because he wasn't yet 18, his mom actually had to sign for him to get his approval, which is still something that they do today. If you're 17 and a half, you can join, but you have to have a parent's approval. So that's going to be a pretty hard decision for a mom to make. But like a lot of these, he's so dead set on it. If she doesn't sign, it's just going to create a strain. And by the time, a few months later when he turns 18, he's going to go anyway. So she ended up signing that paper. Smedley reported to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot on Parris Island, South Carolina, and joined the 1st Recruit Training Battalion. Boot camp in 1966 is obviously going to be very difficult. It's going to be very formalized at this time. An interesting thing about boot camp and basic training was the changes that it went through during World War II, prior to World War II, after World War II, and the formalization. So by the time 1966 comes around, you're going to be getting that very formalized training with the Marine Corps. They've had a few incidents in Marine Corps basic training, river crossing, which resulted in some deaths, where training became very structured, very formal, and these drill sergeants are going to be very, very professional and very, very, very intimidating. Drill instructors in the Marine Corps, drill sergeants in the Army. So he's going to be going through a big culture shock. Whether you want to join the military your whole life or not, when you actually get there and these guys are screaming in your face and you're seeing these people from all over the country, he's 5'6". He's going to be there with dudes that are, 6'2", college athletes. He's going to be there with farm kids. He's going to be there with all kinds of things. So it's going to be a huge deal. And he's moved around a little bit, and Florida's a wild place. But he's going to be there with guys from all over the East Coast and all over the eastern half of the country. So he's going to be there with guys from New York. He's going to be the guy with guys from Chicago, Illinois. He's going to be with, guys, farmers from the heartland and the South and everything else. So it's going to be a bit crazy. But he does complete his boot camp, and he ends up following the boot camp, he ends up reporting to the 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And he is assigned as a rifleman, and eventually he's going to become a team leader. So one of the big things about the Marine Corps, especially during Vietnam, in the Army you have, they used to say there was, I think it was 212 ways to be a soldier. There's a lot of different MOSs. You have a lot of different things you can do. The Marine Corps prides themselves on everybody's a rifleman, right? Everybody needs to be able to fight. But also, the Marine Corps has the ability to have most of their MOSs be combat MOSs regardless, right? They don't need the giant supply trains because they use the Army. So there are support MOSs, but for the most part, it's going to be oriented to those combat MOSs. And Smedley actually becomes a rifleman. So he's a designated infantryman. He's a rifleman, which most people that join the Marines, especially in a time of war, they want to see action. It's not joining for college or for benefits or for the experience. If you join the Marine Corps during a time of war and you become a rifleman, you know that the chances are very good that you're going to see combat. So it seems odd to some people who weren't in the military, but combat is what you want to see, right? You're not dreading it. You joined for a reason, and that's what you want to do. So for him, it was probably very fortunate that he became a rifleman, and that was probably something that he wanted. In July 1967, Smedley was sent to Vietnam. They used to have a saying during Vietnam, if you're a Marine, you're either in Vietnam, had been to Vietnam, or were on your way to Vietnam. So it's almost an inevitability, and then that's what happened. So 18 years old at this time, already going to shoot straight over. So I'm 41 years old now. I remember when I was in the military, I joined at 18, and a lot of people, you guys look so young, and I felt like I had all this life experience and I knew everything, but obviously you don't know anything. So these young 18, 19-year-old kids going to be shipped off to this massive endeavor that's going to shape the rest of their lives, and that's what happened. So he joined at 17, went through boot camp, and immediately he's going to be shipping over. Once again, he was a rifleman when he arrived, and then he ended up being the squad RTO, which is the radio telephone operator. He was assigned to Company D, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines of the 1st Marine Division. And he was there for only 2 months before he made corporal. So he was able to get a little bit of rank. He's now going to be a junior NCO, which is a non-commissioned officer. He's going to have some responsibility. So he's tracking his career, right? He's doing good. He's leading men already, even though it's a small size element. It's going to show that he is doing what he's supposed to do as a Marine, and they're putting faith and trust into him to lead other guys, to handle that radio, which is going to be a lifeline between his commanders, his lieutenants, his platoon sergeants, and all the support they need in the artillery. So they're putting faith and trust in him, so he's doing good things. Smedley's unit operated near Da Nang in an area called Happy Valley, and Da Nang is pretty famous. It's up close to the DMZ, so again, Vietnam has a lot of variety, right? You have the Central Highlands, you have the Delta, you have Da Nang, you have the cities, you have Hue, you have all these things. So where and when you're in Vietnam is largely going to dictate your experiences. If you're down, again, in the Delta in 1972, you're going to have a very different experience than if you're in the Central Highlands in 1965. The Marines up near the DMZ, that's going to be the border. That's going to be North Vietnam, everything's the enemy. South Vietnam is what we're trying to protect. South Vietnam, where we operated, we didn't operate north of the DMZ, but you have a lot of Viet Cong guerrilla activity. Up north, you have a lot of regular Army troops, NVA, crossing, they're going to be very well supplied, they're going to be very well disciplined, and you also have the Viet Cong, you also have that guerrilla warfare. So it's a very dangerous area to be in. And this area that they're operating in, where they're going to be doing their patrols and their missions, there's going to be very dense undergrowth, and there's going to be what's called elephant grass that's 7 to 10 feet high. It's very, very thick, right? So not only are you dealing with the enemy, but you're dealing with this massive, massive overgrowth. It's going to be cutting your arms as you walk by. You're going to be dripping sweat. The sweat's going to be getting into these little cuts and these little abrasions that's going to be caused by this undergrowth. You're going to be having to hack your way through. If you guys go outside and you go for a walk, you know, and you're putting all your gear on in the humidity, especially if you're somewhere where it's hot and humid, now imagine having to fight for every step with a machete to get through, and you're carrying all this heavy gear, and you have limited water, right? That's what they're going to be doing every day, in addition to the enemy, in addition to the threat of booby traps, in addition to the threat of artillery, with addition to all of those other things, just dealing with that heat and that fatigue and that constant stomping. And as you're walking, you know, you're going to be drenched with sweat, but you're also going to be stepping into muddy and wet areas, and then your socks are going to be wet. And for someone like me, that's going to be driving you crazy. But that's just going to be the regular reality of their experience. Also in this area, there's a major VC, Viet Cong, PAVN, base camp. So there's a lot of enemy in there, and it's near a storage area and a supply route. So what that means is that men and material are moving from this PAVN base 20 kilometers east of Laos, which is an area that we're not supposed to be going into, right? That's part of French Indochina. It's Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. So they would use the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They would go outside, skirt the side of the country where we can't retaliate. So all of these men and material are going to be moving from the Laotian border to units near Song Tu Lan and other positions overlooking Da Nang. So we're not able to attack these guys directly, but they're going to be just skirting and flanking, right? They're going to be bringing their men, supplies, and their troops to set up positions where they can harm our guys, our Marines, Smedley, and these other guys. And this area, Da Nang City and Da Nang Air Base, we have a large concentration of troops there. We have a large concentrations of Marines. There's air facilities. There's the whole city works. There's the Red Beach base area, port facilities, Marble Mountain, a lot of troops, a lot of supplies. It's a big target for the enemy. So they're constantly going to be targeted. And the enemy would regularly fire rockets from the hills overlooking Da Nang. These big 122 millimeter rockets, they have a 12-kilometer range. So this area ended up being called the Rocket Belt, where again, from these highlands, the enemy would set up, they would move from areas we couldn't get to, they would fire their rockets down, and then we were just sitting ducks. Smedley and his guys were just sitting ducks, essentially, right? So it's a constant harassing fire. So we're gonna be sending out patrols to try to interdict this and to try to stop this, but it's easy for them to set up, and then we're dealing with it. So guys that are on the base, you're never going to be comfortable. You're never going to be safe. You're never going to be secure. You're always going to be dealing with that looming threat, and you never know when those air raid sirens are going to go, and whether those rockets are going to come in and kill you or your buddy, or hit a major ammo depot, or hit stockpile, and then you're going to have massive casualties. So these guys on their year-long deployments, essentially, it's going to be constant fear, constant grating on you. It was a very dangerous area, but Smedley was tough, and he never complained. One of his buddies, Ken DeHanish, said, quote, "He was a gung-ho guy, a real scrapper. He walked around like he could take on the world," end quote. So again, 5'6" guy, but he's sauntering around. He's a Marine. He's a Marine corporal at this time in Vietnam. He's doing exactly what he wants to do. So even though he's small, he's not scared. At least he's not showing it physically, right? I imagine all these guys are scared, but he's not letting it get to him. He's walking around like he's exactly where he's supposed to be. In December 21st, 1967, Smedley led a 6-man squad to an ambush site at the mouth of Happy Valley near Phuoc Ninh, west of Da Nang military complex. So again, it shows you this young guy, and this is just kind of how the military is. He's leading a 6-man squad, which is a really small element. And that might seem like that's not a lot of guys. That's not that hard. I deal with 6 guys at work or whatever. But this is, you're a young corporal entrusted with these guys, and you're moving into potentially enemy area by yourself, right? Essentially going to set up this ambush. So he's responsible for the lives of these 6 guys that are probably going to be even younger than him. That's a huge responsibility to have. You have to make sure that all your equipment's good, that your plans are good, your tactics are sound, your radios are filled, everybody has ammo, everybody has water, you know how to get in, you know how to get out, you know how to call those 9-line medevacs. It's a massive amount of pressure, and people can die, right? And if you come across something and you fail to do your job reporting it or reacting or whatever that may be, even more people may be killed. So it's a huge responsibility. And he's a young kid, right? He's going to be 18. And also, again, December 21st, this is right around Christmas time. So all these guys are going to be thinking about home. Marines were mostly volunteers, mostly not drafted during the Vietnam War. There's a handful of draftees. But despite that, even if you are where you want to be, you're going to start thinking about your family. December 21st, 4 days from home. A lot of these guys are young kids, but if they have any kids back home, you're going to be thinking about them opening presents without you. Your mom, right? Especially if they're really young. Again, I remember when I was in Iraq, all the holidays, I would be thinking about home, and I knew they were thinking about me. So the stress I had was just magnified on them. So December 21st, 1967, you're pushing through this hot, dense, humid jungle, but back home, depending on where you're from, there might be snow on the ground. Your mom might be rereading your letters over and over. So there's going to be a big part of you that wants to go home, and a big part of you that's only thinking about that, which is not good. It's not good to be distracted in combat. You need to be focused on the mission. But as professional as you want to be, it's hard not to think about those things. Vietnam's the opposite side of the world. So during this time, it's going to be really hot and really humid. The average heat during this time was 80 degrees with an 85% humidity average, right? So that is insane. If you're not from an area, or if you haven't been to these humid areas of the South, 85-degree humidity and 80 degrees heat is just going to it's going to suck the air right out of you, right? You're just going to be wanting to lay down and just give up with every step you take. But these guys have to do it, and they have to move to a fight. I remember in basic training, again, you do these long road marches, and the road march was the accomplishment, right? You'd march 10 miles, 15 miles, 25 miles to get out of basic training. These heavy rucksacks on your back, 40 to 70 pounds or however much. I had a 27.6 pound machine gun. You're carrying all this stuff. When you're done, you get to dump off all your gear and go, oh yeah, we did it. But in Vietnam and in World War II and these things, the road march was to get you to the combat. You still have to have the energy to fight, and you have to fight well because you're fighting for your life, right? And obviously we did the training too, where we would fight at the end of our road marches and training. But imagine what it takes to move to this ambush area. Imagine all the gear you need to survive. Sure, you can strip light and not carry a lot, but then you're going to be without those things when you get there. The less amount of ammo you have, the less amount of ammo you have to survive and fight with. The less amount of food you bring, the less amount you get to eat. The amount of water you bring is how much you get to drink. So if you want to pack that light, good for you, but you're going to be suffering later. But if you want to pack heavy, you're going to be suffering on the road march. So it's a very precarious situation. It's very difficult. Heat casualties are a very real thing, and it's going to be real hard to get you out of the bush if you do fall out, if you have a heat stroke or heat cramps or heat casualty of any sort. So you got to be self-reliant because your guys are dependent on you. To emphasize what this means on this ambush, though, these guys are going to be away from the main base, and they're going to be alone. They're going to be out in the jungle. They're going to be setting up off the main trails, and they're going to be looking for signs of the enemy, hoping to ambush any small elements. So this is a 6-man team. They're probably going to have a heavy machine gun of some sort, and they're going to have some light machine guns. They're going to have some claymore bombs to blow up that they're going to set up. They're going to have potentially a rocket. They're going to have grenades. They're going to have what they can carry with them, but they're not going to have massive weapons, right? They don't obviously have their own artillery. They don't obviously have their own strength. They have what they can carry. They're not all carrying machine guns. There's only 6 of them, so you're going to have your riflemen, and then Smedley's going to be the team leader there. He's going to be leading this little element. If they get attacked by a larger force, which isn't saying much, larger than 6, they can quickly be overwhelmed. So what they need to do is stay quiet and try to observe. So hopefully they can radio back, because that's where their power comes from. If they see a large element, they're not going to want to engage. They are going to want to call in artillery or call in air support or call in whatever is necessary, or just run the base. But if they alert the enemy to their own presence, they better be able to handle that force, or they're going to get decimated very quickly. Once they really arrive at their location where they're going to set up their ambush, essentially what's going to happen in any ambush is you're going to dig in, right? You're going to make small, hasty firing positions. You're going to set up tripwire. You're going to set up your claymores, like I said. You're going to find the avenue where the enemy is likely to be approaching from. And these are well-traveled routes, so they're probably going to be able to find these. So they're going to be looking. They're going to see the enemy's likely to come through this way. We're going to have our LPOPs, listening posts, observation posts set up, but there's only 6 of them, so it's kind of going to be hard to branch off, but that might be something that you normally do in an ambush. They're going to be looking for enemy, and they're going to be making signs. As night falls, you're going to need to get some sleep though. So obviously not everybody can sleep. So you only have 6 men. So you might have 1 man up, or you might have 2 men up at a time, and you're going to be taking these hour shifts to get through the night. Very, very hard to stay up when you're dog tired like that. It's also very hard to stay up because you can't move, right? You can't just get up and wander around and shake it off and do what you need to stay awake. You have to lie in your position, looking down the sights of your gun or your scope or whatever it is, if you have some type of night vision, which I doubt they had here, although they did exist in Vietnam. But just laying, again, I was a machine gunner, laying on my gun like this makes it real easy to start to close your eyes and nod off. But you can't do that because everybody's relying on you. So whether it's an hour or 2, that time would just tick by slowly, right? And you're seeing things because you're in the jungle and the enemy is out there and they can kill you. So you're going to start almost hallucinating. You're tired, you're hungry, you're hot, you're miserable. Again, it's almost Christmas. You might have been there 2 months, or you might have been there 9 months, depending at this time. So you want to go home, but you're a little bit scared. So you're going to start seeing things. I remember, again, being in the military and being so fatigued and being so tired and being so hungry at night that I would start to hallucinate people almost, right? So now imagine that in the jungle. So if you start to see something, your senses are going to play tricks on you. It's pitch black out in that jungle. There's going to be that dense foliage and that elephant grass. Is that sound you heard, was that the enemy or was it a lizard, right? Was that the enemy, or was that some other small animal? Was that the enemy, or was it just your mind playing tricks on you? So you don't want to open fire because you might give up your position. So you want to make sure that you're completely certain, and that's going to be a terrifying thing. But on this night, they did see something. During the night, Smedley and his men are going to be set up in this position, and I don't know if it was Smedley or who was on guard, but they ended up seeing 100 enemy soldiers heading towards the hill looking over the complex. And these were enemy troops that were well armed with 122 millimeter rockets and mortars. 100 enemy soldiers. So this is absolutely something you don't want to engage. I don't care how many Rambo movies you've seen, 6 men taking on 100 men is suicide, right? And again, these guys have mortars and they have rockets. They have armor-piercing rounds, and they have HE rounds. They have a large cache of weapons that they're carrying, these enemy troops. So Smedley immediately realizes if these guys aren't stopped and they get up and they set up in this position that they want to be in, they're going to be causing major, major, major devastation to Da Nang and to this area that they're supposed to be protecting. They're expecting, small patrols of 10, 15, smaller unit guys setting up mortars, setting up rockets, but this is 100 dudes. So this is going to be in a major, major attack. So Smedley immediately realizes the danger to Da Nang, and he's going to, as soon as he can, he's going to call for radio for a QRF team, which is a quick reaction force, hoping that they could intercept the enemy before they launch the attack. If they don't stop these guys, if these guys aren't stopped, they're going to be able to rain devastation down with as much ammunition, as much equipment as they have, as much high casualty producing weapons as they have. So Smedley's going to be desperate right now. He's going to be radioing for everything he have. And again, the time it takes for those QRF forces, they should be ready to go relatively, but they're going to be mostly asleep, right? So they're going to have to get the radio. He's going to have to call back to the major base. They're going to have to wake these guys up or get them going, hopefully if they're awake like they ought to be. Get their gear on and get them moved out, whether they're going to be going by helicopter, by truck, or what have you. I'm not sure in this case, but it's going to take some time. There's going to be a delay. So we have to get those troops out there to stop this 100 enemy man force. So this young kid, this young corporal, his knowledge and his experience is going to be crucial. If he messes up the coordinates on the map, that can cost hundreds of lives from these rockets attack, or dozens of lives more likely, right? If he is unable to give the proper description, direction, designation of the enemy, all these things, and we go the wrong place, or they send troops to the wrong area, and there's another major attack, right? If this is a decoy or this is something like that, these are huge decisions that have to be made. But based on what he saw and based on what he knows, this is something that has to be stopped. And there's also the danger to themselves, okay? These 100 men, if any of these guys see them, right, there is danger to the base, but there's also danger to Smedley and his 6-man team. They don't want to die either. So if they alert these enemy to their presence, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So in order for them to survive, Smedley and his men would have to hunker down and wait for the QRF and pray the enemy doesn't see them. Now imagine what that would be like in the middle of the night. There's 6 of you, right? You're going to be laying down. You're going to be wanting everybody to be quiet. It's going to be so loud. You're going to start hearing your own heartbeat. You're going to start hearing your breath. Every little movement and flinch you're going to hear, and you're going to be praying the enemy doesn't hear it. And they're likely not going to be, but in your head, those, you can feel the blood pulsing in your ears. It's so loud when the enemy's close. Scary situations like that when you're having to wait to fire or wait to not fire, just praying that they don't see you. Smedley only has 6 men. They basically are helpless to protect this base. If the enemy does make an attack, Smedley and his men aren't going to be able to do a whole lot, so they're literally just going to have to watch helplessly, right? That's going to be one of those parts of warfare that, whether you want to or not, if you start seeing them attack and you engage with 6 men, you're going to be committing suicide, essentially. So that's something that may as well happen here too. That's something that may very well happen here too, right? Is the QRF doesn't get there in time, or while you're waiting, you are going to be watching, and you're going to be seeing every rocket being fired, every mortar being fired, and you're going to know that those may be resulting in the deaths of your friend. So back on the base and back in that complex. So the smart decision, the tactical decision, the well-practiced decision is to lay low and be quiet. But Smedley refused to lay low while others were in danger. So Smedley decided that despite conventional wisdom, despite the odds, despite everything, he was going to take his 6 men and maneuver to attack, even though they were outnumbered 15-1. Smedley had so much courage and confidence in himself and his men that he decided they were going to maneuver and attack this large force. Attack 100 men with 6 men. That's around 15-1 odds. Again, this isn't the movies where every shot you take hits the enemy and every shot they take misses you. This is real life, where they have superior numbers, they have superior weapons, and you are limited to what you have, right? You are American troops in Vietnam. They know the area. They know everything very well. You have the element of surprise. You have the initiative, which is going to be what's on your side, but everything else they have going for them. So 6 men versus 100, and they chose to put themselves between Da Nang and between this large enemy force. They see this massive complex down there, again, where their friends are sleeping, where civilians are sleeping, where people they're not helpless, but they are unaware of the dangers that are going to come at them. And Smedley and his men know that they're going to die, but they have to stop these guys. So they're going to take that chance, and they're going to sell their lives dearly if that's what it takes to be able to protect these guys and to be able to do their mission. They basically decided that they're going to buy time with their lives, is the way I see it. When you know that you're that outnumbered, the only thing they're going to do is disrupt this attack by dying. They know that if they lead themselves into this force, the enemy's going to have to engage them rather than engaging the complex down below. They're going to stop them from being able to rain devastation with impunity, and they're going to make them pay a very, very, very dear price for what they're trying to do. If they're lucky, they can cause a large amount of casualties and maybe even make the enemy break and run. The enemy might not know that it's only 6 of them, right? If you open up with the machine guns and you open up with those crew serve weapons and you get some rockets going on your own and you get those grenades and everything going, you blast those claymores, they might suffer enough casualties that they might feel like they're combat ineffective. They might think they're walking into a force of 20, 40, or 100 men. So that's going to be the goal here, right? All they have going for them is that. The element of surprise and that audacity that often carries the day, as we've seen time and again on these stories, right? Time and again, one man with courage makes a majority. One man with audacity to push forward is going to drive those enemies on their heels. When the enemy starts getting hit and you don't let off, that's the way the smaller force is going to beat that bigger force, and that's what they're going to try to do. But realistically, they have very little chance. At Smedley's direction, he and his squad are going to move quietly through the dark jungle to approach this large, heavily armed force. Without warning, they're going to launch the attack. So the night's going to open up, right? This quiet. And these enemy soldiers are going to be fatigued and tired too. They're carrying a lot of equipment. They have very little food and they have very little sleep too. They're going to be trying to move as quietly as they can. So they're going to be marching all through the night, carrying all this heavy equipment, all these heavy rockets. And then all of a sudden the night's going to open up with gunfire. They're going to be struck down and they're going to be watching their friends get hit. Because Smedley and his men, they're going to immediately open fire and they're going to cause a large amount of wounded. The darkness of the jungle is only going to be lit by the muzzle flashes of Smedley and his men's machine guns and rifles as they're firing these grenade blasts. Now, this is going to do exactly what Smedley was hoping for. The enemy can't focus on pushing forward to the attack now, right? They can't push forward to this hill to launch their attack on Da Nang because now they're focused solely on surviving and destroying this small force that's attacking them. And they don't know how small this force is. They don't know that it's only 6 guys. All they know is their guys are bleeding, their guys are screaming, and their guys are down. And they're going to be carrying this heavy equipment. So they're going to be dropping their big guns and trying to grab their AK-47s and things to actually fire back. But Smedley and his men aren't going to let up. With rifles, machine guns, and grenades, they're going to start raking the enemy, right? So their one machine gun's going to be just opening up on these guys. As the machine gun starts putting men down, grenades are exploding. The enemy's fighting back though, right? They're throwing their grenades back, and Smedley was going to be thrown to the ground by a blast and seriously wounded early on in this attack. So that initiative can push back and forth We're only a 6-man team. You have one guy, you have Smedley. He's going to be directing and he's going to be yelling. You're going to have your machine gun going. When the enemy starts to react, and obviously they're in close enough range to be throwing grenades, that should show you how close and how precarious this position is. Smedley's going to get thrown to the ground by this dust blast and seriously wounded with part of his foot blown off. So imagine the fear, imagine the concussion. It wasn't recognized widely in the past, but we talk about it a lot now, that CTE, right? That traumatic head injury that he's going to be having. His ears are going to be ringing, his vision's going to be blurred, he's going to be looking down, he's going to be feeling that pulsating pain, and he's going to look and his foot's gone, right? Most of his foot is going to be actually blown off. That's going to be terrifying, and if you get in a car accident and you look and half your foot's gone, most people are going to panic, or you're going to be focusing solely on your foot. What do I do to fix this? Oh my God, this is devastating. I'm going to live my life like this, or I don't want to die, and you're going to be watching that blood gush. But Smedley, at his young age, is a corporal and a leader of Marines, right? So he's going to look around and he's going to not focus on his wound. He's going to see the chaos that's enveloping his men. He's going to see that our initial attack went well, but now we're kind of getting it back, right? They're laying down devastating fire on us, and his guys are starting to break, and they're starting to lose their discipline, I should say. I don't want to say panic, but they're suffering the consequences of the enemy attack. So Smedley knows that he has to show courage. He knows that if he breaks and screams and focuses on his own wound, his men are going to start doing the same. And if that happens, they may all die. So Smedley knows that he has to show courage, and he has to show how he's going to gain the initiative, or all of his men are going to die. And although they're willing to give their lives, they need to sell their lives dearly, as I said, because if they are wiped out quickly, this force is going to move back to their main attack, and they can't have that. So as blood's pouring from his wounded foot, he's going to struggle to his feet, and he's going to yell encouragement to his men. He's not going to yell help. He's not going to yell corpsman. He's not going to yell somebody get over here and give me a tourniquet. He's going to yell. Despite his pain, fatigue, and fear, he's going to say, come on, men, let's take the fight to him. He's going to charge directly at the main group of enemy soldiers while firing his rifle and throwing grenades. Again, that's going to be, one-handed with the M16 or the M14. I actually don't know what weapon system he had at that time. And he's going to be throwing grenades with his other hand as he's charging into the enemy. Whether it's 1 man or 10 men, when you have someone that's that boldly attacking, the enemy has to focus their attention on them. They have to, right? Even if it is just 1 man with a rifle, and you would think, we've got all these other things. If you're the enemy receiving that, they have to shift and focus their attention. And that's what Smedley wants, because if they're focusing their attention on him as he's charging into them, they're not focusing their attention on his men. They're not focusing their attention on his buddies that are also getting wounded. So he's going to close the distance, and as he's going to do so, he's going to be struck down by multiple gunshot wounds and knocked to the ground. 5'6" young Marine, right? They've already chosen 6 men to attack a force of 100 men, and they're doing a great job. Their machine guns laying waste into these guys. This attack that's directed by Smedley is going great. Now Smedley's wounded, half his foot's blown off, and he decides to try. Imagine what it would feel like, right? If you've ever stubbed your toe or you've ever broken a foot or broken a toe, to keep walking on that. He's got half his foot blown off, and he's running forward with it. As he does so, he's going to get shot multiple times and knocked to the ground, but he's still alive. So at this point, he's gravely, gravely wounded. His foot's mangled. Each step is going to be agonizing, and he has multiple gunshot wounds, which are going to knock the wind out of him. And he's going to be leaking blood and throbbing everywhere that those gunshots are. I've talked about it on the show before. I've never been wounded, but one of the things I always think about is you don't know how bad your wounds are, and that's got to set some sort of panic alarms in your head, right? Some people die from small little shrapnel wounds. Other people survive massive catastrophic amputations and things. So you don't know. All he knows is that he's bleeding, and he knows he's shot. And he's probably shot with 7.62 AK-47 rounds. So he's going to have big holes in him, right? He's going to have that CTE. His brain's essentially going to be swimming. You get a bad enough head injury from a grenade blast through you that was obviously close enough to blow your foot off. You're going to be disoriented, but he's still a leader. He's losing blood too, which is going to cause you to get weak. It's going to cause you to get tired, and it's going to cause you to get cold. The only thing you would want to do there is lay down, right? Just lay down and give up and hope somebody comes and helps you. The only thing you would want is morphine. The only thing you would want is some painkillers and to get out of there, right? Again, it's almost Christmas. You might be thinking of your mom. You might be thinking at home, but instead you're laying there in the jungle bleeding with gunshot wounds, and bleeding with a foot blown off, and bleeding with a head injury, and bleeding with probably other shrapnel all up his leg from getting his foot blown off as well. But guys are screaming. Guys are bleeding, guys are dying. His guys are bleeding, right? The enemy's screaming, the enemy's dying. There's chaos, the jungle's lit up, people are firing in every direction. So he knows that his men needs him, and he's going to refuse to give up. He already decided he was willing to give his life for this mission. He already decided that he's a United States Marine and he's not going to let these enemies take him without a fight. So he's actually going to use his rifle for support to be able to struggle to his feet. He can't even stand up without assistance. So he has to use his rifle to prop himself up. Once again, he's going to single-handedly charge at the enemy. And the enemy machine gun nest is going to be the one that's causing the most devastation, right? There's an enemy machine gun on their flank that's protecting the bulk of their guys. So he knows that that's where the enemy's causing the most devastation from. So he's going to attack that machine gun. He's going to charge forward as fast as he can on that wounded foot. He's going to charge forward as fast as he can on that mangled leg and that body with gunshot wounds, that 5'6" frame loaded down with equipment. He's going to charge forward as fast as he can as the rounds are zipping by his head as he's closing the distance. And as he's doing so, he's firing his rifle and he's hurling those grenades. And through his sheer will and determination, he's going to make it. He's going to get close enough to destroy that machine gun crew and destroy that gun, allowing his men relief. If you've never been in combat or you don't understand, if you haven't been in the military, you don't understand the movies, think of the devastation a machine gun's going to cause versus rifles, right? So if you're an American Marine, you're one of Smedley's guys, and you're pinned down, all you can do is pray. If you get up or you move, there's a good chance that you can get hit by this devastating fire if you're within range and they have their sights set on you. So Smedley's going to relieve that. He's going to push forward and he's going to be able to destroy that machine gun through his sheer will. Unfortunately, by charging this machine gun and by doing what he's doing, he's causing the enemy again to shift their fire towards him. So all these other enemy soldiers, initially they're going to be having their own problems. They're going to be engaging the enemy. They're going to be engaging the Americans. But all of a sudden, they're going to hear their machine gun silence, right? They're going to be hearing what's going on. And they're going to know, they're going to look, and they're going to see this lone Marine charging that position. So even though Smedley's successful and he's able to push through and he's able to destroy that crew and destroy that gun with his grenades and his rifle fire, these guys are going to shift their fire to Smedley. And once again, he's going to be struck in the chest, either by rifle or machine gun fire. So now he's going to have these devastating wounds to the chest. Smedley immediately collapsed to the ground and he died on the spot. You can have all the courage and initiative you want, but when you take those rounds to those vital organs, right, he was killed instantly and he fell. But as he did so, his wounded men watched and they were inspired. So these other 5 guys that are still alive, largely because of Smedley's action, they're going to rally and they're going to remount their attack. That machine gun's taken out, but more importantly, their leader and their friend is dead. So now the enemy is vulnerable because Smedley had destroyed that machine gun that was on the flank that was protecting their position. So now these 5 guys that are not facing 100 guys anymore, they may be facing 70 guys or however many, depending on how many they've already destroyed, which is unknown. But now they're able to advance, and they're able to drive off this enemy. These guys are able to rally by Smedley's courage and by Smedley's inspiration. They're going to push forward. They're going to engage the enemy with everything they have, and they're going to be able to drive them off. Again, the enemy doesn't know how many they're being attacked by. All they know is they're being attacked by well-disciplined, well-directed fire. Their machine gun's gone, so discretion is the better part of valor, and they're going to flee. Smedley gave his life in the defense of his men, in the defense of this mission, in the defense of Da Nang. And by doing so, his actions protected his guys and allowed them to fight off the enemy. But more importantly, perhaps, it thwarted the attack on Da Nang, saving countless lives. One of his fellow Marines, Anthony Johnson, later said, quote, "There's no question Larry Smedley knew he was going to die. If not for him, rockets would have rained down on the air base. There were people who never knew he saved their lives." End quote. And at the time of his death, he was 18 years old. Larry Smedley died just a few days before Christmas, and on June 20th, 1969, he was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Smedley's family was invited to the White House, where President Nixon gave his family the Medal of Honor at a White House ceremony. Smedley was buried at Arlington Cemetery, which was a request he had prior to shipping to Vietnam. He said if he died in combat, he wanted to be buried in Arlington, which kind of shows you his mindset. Now I'm going to read Larry Smedley's Medal of Honor citation. "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as a squad leader with Company D, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division, in connection with operations against the enemy in the Republic of Vietnam. On the evenings of 20 to 21 December 1967, Corporal Smedley led his 6-man squad to an ambush site at the mouth of Happy Valley near Phuoc Ninh in Quang Nam Province. Later that night, an estimated 100 Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army regulars carrying 122mm rocket launchers and mortars were observed moving towards Hill 41. Realizing this was a significant enemy move to launch an attack on the vital Da Nang complex, Corporal Smedley immediately took sound and courageous action to stop the enemy threat. After he radioed for a reaction force, he skillfully maneuvered his men to a more advantageous position and led an attack on the numerically superior enemy force. A heavy volume of fire from an enemy machine gun positioned on the left flank of the squad inflicted several casualties on Corporal Smedley's unit. Simultaneously, an enemy rifle grenade exploded nearby, wounding him in the right foot and knocking him to the ground. Corporal Smedley disregarded this serious injury and valiantly struggled to his feet, shouting words of encouragement to his men. He fearlessly led a charge against an enemy machine gun emplacement, firing his rifle and throwing grenades until he was again struck by enemy fire and knocked to the ground. Gravely wounded and weak from loss of blood, he rose and commenced a one-man assault against the enemy position. Although his aggressive and single-handed attack resulted in the destruction of the machine gun, he was struck in the chest by enemy fire and fell mortally wounded. Corporal Smedley's inspiring and courageous actions, bold initiative, and selfless devotion to duty in the face of certain death were keeping within the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. He gallantly gave his life for his country. All right, and that's the story of Larry Smedley. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed hearing the story of a Marine who gave his life to protect not only his men, not only to protect Da Nang, but in service of a cause that he believed in. Vietnam's a very contentious war, but there were a lot of guys that believed in the cause. There were a lot of guys that volunteered to go over there. And that's why it's important for me to remember these guys, right? It's easy to look back on Hollywood portrayals or even our own personal experiences, but every individual in a war, every individual in any situation is going to have their own motivations. Smedley believed in the cause. He believed in it from the start. He believed in his country and he wanted to fight. He was willing to give his life and he did so. And I think that's a very powerful thing that deserves to remember. So, again, that's the story of Larry Smedley. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you liked it. Like I said, I can do more like this if anybody's interested. This is my World War II mannequin. This is Audie. I'm going to keep him here. I'm just going to keep that up World War II style. I'm not going to, I don't have the means to change it every time anymore, unfortunately. I noticed that there's a pretty bad glare there. I'll try and fix that. But like I said, if you're interested in this kind of thing, let me know. I'll keep doing it. If this is just wasting everybody's time, that's fine too. So rock and roll. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.